Okay, can you hear me now? There we go. Hey, thank you for letting me know, Shoya. Apparently I bumped the switch on my mic, so it's been off. So, we just set these down for a quick second. So I'll have to trim that out. Thank you for letting me know, I appreciate it. Loud and clear, excellent. So, today what we're gonna be doing is an arm workout for in between days after you've done your upper body workout, but you still wanna get another upper body something done. I really like focusing in on the arms. So we're working the bicep and the tricep while we're still waiting for the chest and back to recover. So you're still building muscle, but you're giving your body time to heal from that soreness in your chest and back. So today we're gonna be doing a dumbbell exercise for the arms. So if that sounds good, go ahead and hit like for me to let me know you want more of this type of content. So what we're gonna start with is a pair of exercises called a skull crusher and a incline bench curl. So, I'm gonna grab a set of dumbbells, laying on my back. So for the skull crusher, you want the dumbbells right over the top of your shoulder, right above your shoulder. And I like to have my palms facing out towards the ceiling. So you're gonna keep your elbows up above your shoulder and then straighten out towards the front. Now careful to not bump yourself in the head. Even though it's called the skull crusher, you want to go just past your ears and then out straight. Should feel that tension on your tricep. Now, keeping your elbow high above your shoulder, sort of up like this, will help keep that tension on the tricep the whole time. Skull knot crusher, that's right. Just gonna adjust the camera's a little bit up. Multiple arm stimulus feels good, absolutely. So I find that my arms recover faster than my chest does. So I'm trying to add extra arms in to have them grow a little bit faster. So for this, we're gonna do an incline curl. Now these are more intense than a standard curl is, so you might want to drop the dumbbell down just a little bit. What we're going to do is start with the dumbbell right pointed straight up towards the ceiling. Then from here you're going to straighten your elbow, bringing the dumbbell down towards the ground, and then back up, curling up. So this is putting a lot of extra tension on that bicep. So you don't need a really heavy dumbbell to create a ton of extra tension. And relax. So when I'm doing any exercise, I like to do multiple sets. Now it's for multiple sets. If you're looking for a really efficient workout, few sets get you the majority of what you can gain, but multiple sets, or if you're looking for efficiency, few sets are good. If you're looking to maximize your results though, multi-sets are going to get you more results faster. You get diminishing returns, but you still get additional returns. So Shoya says, finally got a gym membership after training from home for 3 years. Hey, that's awesome. I think it's so good you've been training from home, and sometimes gyms give you more options for what equipment's available. And whether you have a gym or are training from home, there's great ways of building muscle and getting stronger. But that's awesome. Sometimes it's nice to have a gym too, because you have a dedicated space to be able to work out. I know sometimes just having the bench, the rack and everything, it's nice to have, but it does also take up quite a lot of room. So we're going to go back to a second set of skull crushers. So hands right over the top of your shoulders, palms facing out, bending your elbows. Now on this, it's important to not flare your elbows like a bench press. You want to keep your elbows in and up. And then bringing the hands down to your ears, keeping that tension on the tricep the whole time. You should feel that right in the back of your arm. I'm going until I feel tired in that back of the arm. And relax. Shoya says the split has changed. Lower day, upper day, rest, push, legs, pull, rest, and the week loops. Lower day, upper day, rest, push, legs, pull, rest. Gotcha. So on the push and pull, are you doing upper body push and pull and then legs in between? That sounds like a good split though. You're getting everything covered. And you've got 3 days between legs. I like that because it gives you enough time to recover with your legs. Usually that takes longer to recover. I find for me, I need at least 3 days before hitting legs again. I find 2 days is not quite enough. Main focus is legs. Gotcha. Okay. Nice. So, and getting 2 days a week for legs is a pretty good split of things. That's very good. The studies I read on it said that they tested doing legs 2 days out of the week versus 3 days. And for the study I read, they found that the 2-day group actually had more growth. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Upper body, you would want more days. Lower body, actually giving more rest can be the more effective way of doing things. It's kind of counterintuitive, but your body needs that rest to recover from the work you've been doing too. Let's see, we just did skull crushers, so we're gonna do curls for a second set. These are deceptively intense. So I'm trying to really straighten my arm all the way out to the ground. And I'm going until I feel tired in that muscle. And relax. All right, going right into skull crushers. Well, my tricep was resting, my bicep was working, and then vice versa. So this way we can get a more efficient workout in, doing what are called supersets, where we do muscles in pairs. And 12. So one day focus compound movements like squats and RDLs. The other focus is on leg extension and leg curls. That's awesome. So when you're doing compound, compound movements, for anyone who doesn't know, are where we combine a lot of muscles all at once, working all at the same time. So like a squat is working the quads in the front, the glutes and the hamstrings all at once, as opposed to doing something like the leg extension or the leg curl. So the leg extension is this with the knee, usually done with the machine. So that's working the quad muscles on their own, or doing leg curls is working that hamstring muscle in more isolation. Both are good exercises, but so having one day of compound and another day of more isolation really lets you focus in on those muscles. Feel like it's a natural lifter, absolute strength should be focused on more than isolating. So I think whether you're natural or enhanced, I personally really am an advocate of being natural. I think there are less side effects doing that, and I think it has a better lifespan. You have more longevity with it. And I think that focusing on absolute strength is definitely a good goal, where you're focusing more on low reps, high strength, and those tend to be more compound lifts. Isolation movements tend to be more about muscle hypertrophy, where you're increasing muscle size for a particular muscle rather than using a lot of muscle all together to lift more load or more weight. So anytime we're talking about absolute strength, it's probably going to be a compound movement. If you look at powerlifting, they do the squat, the bench press, and what's the third one? Is it deadlift? I'm not a power lifter. I know they do squat and bench. I can't remember what the third exercise they do is, but on that, those are all compound movements, because the only thing they care about is absolute strength. Or I should say relative strength, relative absolute strength, because it's relative to your body size. But I think that is such a great goal to have, be more worried about absolute strength, because especially how we use our body, it's not so much how well can you do a curl, but how well can you lift up something that's going to take the biceps, the lats, maybe some of the traps as well. You're lifting something heavy, and being able to do that is a very beneficial thing. So isolations can be good for catching up muscles to other muscles, but eventually you want to incorporate compound movements into your workout. And I would actually say that starting out, compound movements are a great way of starting, because you get a lot of muscles really efficiently. Now, whether you're starting or you're advanced, you still want to do compound movements. But sometimes you want to catch up a muscle that's a little bit less. That's where that isolation can be better. Or when one muscle is sore, then you can isolate away from that muscle. like today. That's it for that exercise for me. So for today, if I was trying to do a compound movement for the upper body, like a row, I wouldn't be able to do it because my lats are still so sore. But I can do an isolation movement like a curl because my biceps aren't nearly as sore. So it lets you get more out of your body in a limited time. Sometimes compound movements can be really taxing on your whole system where you're still sore. And so that's where isolation movements come in, where you can still keep working out. So that's one of the things I really like about your split, Shoya, is that you can take one day for compound, doing a lot of things together. And then when you come back, you're doing a more precise push-pull where you can work around in those isolations. Yeah, deadlift, but what about snatch and clean? Snatch and clean is a great power exercise. So, because you have to move the weight quickly and get underneath it. Now, I'm not an Olympic lifter, so I believe that snatch and clean is here and then pushing up, right? That's the snatch and clean. I haven't trained as much for the Olympic lifting. I do much more of what's the health side rather than the sports side. So that takes power, which is producing force quickly. And that's an entirely different thing than maximum force. Maximum force usually is slow. Power is quickly. And that's, that can be a different type of training, or that is a different type of training. You actually want to move explosively. So depends on what your goal is. Both are good. That's more of a specific sport adaptation where you would want to train moving the weight quickly to produce that sort of power. It actually changes somewhat how that muscle contracts, because the EMG, or the electrical signal testing for quick movements, tend to be more surface muscles as opposed to deep muscles from the studies I've read on it. So it will actually grow different parts of the muscle to do it under power. So force is just how much weight can you move. Power is how quickly can you move a set of weight. So power is more the snatch and clean. And then if you were just to do an overhead press, that's more of a force. Doesn't matter how fast you're doing it, just how much weight can you move. Ironically, powerlifting is more about force than it is power. It is kind of a funny name for that sport. Oh, okay. So that was set number 2. We're gonna go for a third set. Trying to get everything we can out of that muscle. I know when I was in school, I didn't actually know what powerlifting was at first. And that was a test question of what does powerlifting most use? And that's where I learned that powerlifting is just about maximum force. It's just a misnomer that it's named that. So if I was going for power, I'd try to explosively push these back up as opposed to in just maximum strength. I don't care how fast I'm pushing it back up. I'm just pushing it as much as I can. By definition, that's always going to be slower than how much you can do with power quickly. And going into a curl. And one more. 8. and relax. Yeah, force is just strength and power is explosiveness. That is a great way of thinking about it. So power is always quick, and force is just maximum strength. So for the math of it, just to get a little bit nerdy, is force is strength and power is force divided by time. So it's always going to be smaller than the maximum strength because you have to divide it by the time it takes. So explosiveness, how fast did you explode back up on that movement? All right. So now I'm going to do an exercise called a preacher curl. Now, if you don't have a bench, you could also do this using something like a chair, where you're gonna put your elbow on the top of a chair. So this is just a standard computer chair. Just something that's sturdy, that's gonna give you a little bit of padding would be just fine. So what we're gonna do is another pair of exercises. So the first one is gonna be an overhead press. Now this is working the top of the shoulder as well as the tricep. So the back of the arm. Make sure there's nothing above you that you're gonna hit. You're gonna press up to the ceiling and then back down to the front of your shoulder. So I'm keeping my chest pointed up and from here, pressing straight up and then back down, all the way down to my shoulder. I'm trying to keep the dumbbells wide as well. So they're not coming in together over the top of my head. I'm keeping them over the top of my shoulder. And then I'm gonna set one dumbbell to the side. So that's an overhead press. Hey, B2, good to see you, welcome. Now we're gonna do a preacher curl. So for this is hitting more of that. So we're working actually the brachialis a little bit more. We're still working the bicep, but the brachialis is a little bit more active in this one, and that's the muscle right here underneath your bicep. It actually pushes your bicep up. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna put your elbow on the top of a bench or a chair. So I'm shortening the bicep a little bit by bringing my shoulder forward. So that's gonna engage a little bit more of that brachialis. So what we're gonna do from here is you're going to drop your hand down to the bench, tap, and then back up. So try and do about 10 of these each side. Now, if you can't get to exactly 10, that is okay. Just do what you can. Isn't preacher curl more focused on the short head? So you will have short head activation. So the way that the bicep works, the more I pull it out here, the more this inside portion is engaged. And the more, when I pull it here, I get more of that stretch of the long head. So a preacher curl is a little bit maybe more pulled out towards the side so you get a little more short head activation. But because I'm shortening it up here, I'm reducing some of that tension down into both heads of the bicep. That's why you get a little bit more of that brachialis activation on a preacher curl. So depending on how your arm is oriented, if it's more out like this, you get more of that inside medial aspect, more like this, because I'm shortening the short head. If I pull it in to do this sort of curl, like a concentration curl, but a preacher curl, I probably get a little bit more of that short head, but overall, in both heads of the bicep, I've reduced that tension. Does that make sense? Now, if I'm excuse me. Now, I'm not saying that you don't get any activation of the short head, you definitely do. I just find I get less in the bicep on that one because I've shortened that bicep, which is called active insufficiency, where I've moved the end points of the muscle closer together, so there's more slack in the muscle, so when it tries to pull, it's just taking up that slack. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing on my left side. So going down, tapping, and then coming back up. Wow, my left side is so much more tired. See how my shoulder is actually a bit forward? So if my shoulder was back, I'd have more lengthening in that bicep. And relax. B2 says, my brachialis is very weak and I've been trying to grow it for a while. Any tips on what might be wrong? I do hammer curls for the brachialis and also pronated grip curls while doing forearm. So you're doing a pronated grip, which, hang on a moment, let me just set this down. So doing a pronated grip curl, what he's talking about is where your palm is facing down and then doing a curl like this up. Now that will hit the brachialis. A hammer curl, where your thumb is pointed up, will hit more of that brachioradialis, the muscle that's down here below the elbow. It pulls across the elbow right here. So a hammer curl is really great for targeting that brachioradialis. It will do some of the biceps, some of the brachialis, but not quite as much. If you really want to focus on that brachialis especially, you could do a pronated curl like this, but I personally don't find that really has worked well for my brachialis. What you're going to want to do to isolate it is something sort of like this preacher curl, where we're bringing the shoulder in a little bit, because what that does is it reduces the amount of bicep activation. So the only muscle that is really put at mechanical advantage is that brachialis, that muscle that runs right here underneath the bicep. So ways you could do that would be a preacher curl, we'll do that, or a concentration curl is also another great way of doing that, where, let me move this just a little bit. So if you're seated and resting your elbow against the bench, so I'm shortening that bicep, but I'm still letting that brachialis engage. That's hard to see, isn't it? Give me a moment. It's a great question though. So let me just move this down for a moment. There we go. So you're resting your elbow in. So I'm shortening that bicep, So the only thing, because the brachialis is a elbow flexor, it pulls this up. So by shortening the other elbow flexor, that bicep, I'm making it so I have to engage that brachialis to really pull up. You can even put your hand here to feel if your bicep is contracting underneath it as much. It shouldn't be really taut like a guitar string up here. So you should be able to feel it underneath. You could put your thumb right here to feel that your brachialis is engaging. I found those are the exercises that help me really focus in on that. So those are much more isolation style exercises, things that bend the elbow without extending the shoulder. So bicep curls, extended shoulder. But, oh, I cramped. That was pretty intense. So I find that those are more effective for me. I know some people feel a great pump doing the pronated curl, and that works well for their brachialis. And if that works well for you, if you feel that really engaging where it's sore, or you feel a good pump, feel like there's a lot of blood flow in the muscle, and you are seeing the muscle grow, then that can be a great exercise for you. If that's not working, finding an exercise that works well for you. That's why we have a lot of variety, not because there's one best exercise and all the others are terrible. It's because actually a little bit is how much do you feel it personally? How much is this growing for you? Some people, they feel it even when doing pull-ups, they feel their biceps really engage a lot. Some people not so much. They feel it much more in their lats. So I tried those and let me know how it goes. For me, for instance, bicep curl, hitting that bicep has always been really tough to get a great stimulus into that muscle for muscle growth. All right, working out those triceps and shoulders with an overhead press. So I'm gonna bring the dumbbells to the front of my shoulders. This is set number 2, pushing up towards the ceiling and then back down all the way where I'm trying to really bend my elbows. With all these exercises, the whole goal is to put high tension on the muscle to go to a fully stretched position. We'll do that. That's why I'm really trying to bend my elbows all the way down. Same thing with the brachialis. I'm trying to give that a stretch position where other muscles can't take over. Sometimes that can take a little bit of time to figure out how to get it to do that. And 12. So B2 asks a question, do you prefer doing shoulder press sitting or standing, and why? That's a good question. I personally prefer standing because I naturally will have my back straight and I'll be pressing up towards the front. I feel like that's more how I would be using that muscle already. If I'm lifting something overhead, like let's say I'm lifting a heavy box, I'm probably not gonna be seated doing that. So I'm more simulating how I would be using that in real life. And I don't have to be worried about, okay, making sure to arch the back, to keep the back flat, to be at a 45-degree angle, or a 60-degree angle, or on the bench. So I find that it's more natural for me to do an overhead press standing. Now, nothing's wrong with sitting, nothing's wrong with doing that. I find just having to mess with the bench each time I want to do it is not what I want to do, so it's easier and more convenient for me to just do it standing. But if you are more comfortable seated, that's totally fine too. I find that having to do fewer adjustments is better for a workout because you can get through more quickly and efficiently. I do realize I'm stopping to talk because I've got you guys here, so I'm being a little less efficient already too. But I just realized that people have tighter times that they have to work out. So for the front delt, would it be better seated? I think it would be about equivalent on both, because the shoulder joint, whether I'm standing or whether I'm seated here, I'm still putting the same forces through that front delt. I should still be pushing at roughly the same angle. And the only joint that I would see it really being different for would be your lower back, actually. So these muscles in here, if you're seated, I'm pulling my legs up like this. So I've changed how my hips are structured. So I would have to really focus on keeping that spine straight and pushing from that. But I think from the shoulder, it's going to be about the same. Now, there are what's called EMG data, where you could attach little electrodes to the front of your shoulder and see for you personally, does it change pushing from a standing to a seated? There are ways of testing that. So I would say for me, I haven't really noticed a difference in my front delts. Yeah, EMG analysis. And I haven't tested that specific exercise with EMG. When we were in school, when I was in school, we did that as part of our labs, was doing different exercises and having EMG data, testing the different muscles. That particular one I did not test. I would have to look to see if there was a study evaluating those variations. But without more specific data, best practices, I would say it's probably about the same. Now that is an educated guess. So if you find something more specific, I might be a little bit off on it, but I'd say it's probably pretty close, even if there is a slight difference. So going to a preacher curl, going down and back up. Now, if I put my hand here, I can actually feel that brachialis contracting underneath the bicep. Sort of just go right underneath the ridge of the bicep. You can feel that tension. It's like a guitar string underneath. And same thing on the other side. Oh, it is definitely harder to do this on my left hand. So that was set number 2. Trying for 3 sets on all these exercises. So there's a study that says for upper chest incline bench exercise, but the best way to do it is by changing the angle of the bench to 60 degrees, like almost doing a shoulder press. True? So yeah, doing a 60-degree bench press. So that would be, actually I have it at 60 degrees right now. So it's doing a bench press like this, but that would be for the upper chest. So I'm putting less of that into my lower chest, much more into my upper chest. It is almost like a shoulder press. Now for a true shoulder press though, rather than an incline bench, I would want it up here where it's much more perpendicular, where I'm doing an overhead press. So I'm really barely using my chest. It's probably reducing my chest activation in this to do a really upright, and this would be much more like a, much more, I might even actually go to 90 like this. Much more of an overhead press like this. And this versus doing it standing, very similar joint angles. As opposed to, for a incline press, I've actually changed the joint angle up. As opposed to overhead press sitting versus standing, the joint angle is very symmetrical between sitting and standing. So in that's why I would say they're probably very similar in their muscle activation. It's a good question though, very good question. And yeah, for the incline press, the more inclined you are doing, the more you're shifting that force up towards the upper pec. So that upper chest right up here gets more and more of that activation. You're putting more tension through it, and that's going to lead to a better result. And that, as you said, that's what the studies are showing. That's what the educated guess shows us or was saying, and the studies back it up. Now, if it's the same joint angle, I'm probably going to be getting a very similar activation of that muscle. Something that a seated version can do is it gives you more stability. So if you feel like it's an unstable movement where you're not able to quite control it, the seated position can give you more stability, which would let you push more weight. So in that sense, if you feel like it's unstable, do the seated, because that will actually probably help be able to isolate that movement better. Gives you a nice stable base of support using that bench. So if that is the case for you, I would recommend the seated bench to work on stability to where you get to the point where you could do it either way and it would be equivalent. Does that make sense? I think I need just a second. My hands are feeling it. I feel like the forearms are burning right now. Now, yeah, do you have a way that you prefer? Do you prefer the seated variation, B2? Do you like doing the seated variation, the overhead press? Because it's totally fine. That is a great exercise to do. In fact, we could actually do that as the last one because I'll go to bicep curl and then we can just move the bench one time and do the last one seated together as well. So we're gonna do one more set of preacher curls. I should start with my left hand because my left hand is more tired and I might not be able to get to 10. That way, if I can't get to 10, I can just match it on my dominant side. I'm gonna do 4 reps where I'm helping it up and then going down and helping up. So 8 with 4 reps. That's because I've gotten everything I can out of this muscle. So I'm gonna do 6 normal. 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then 2 forced reps. 7, and 8. B2 says I do the seated variation. Totally fine. That's awesome. It's because when I started doing it, I used to do seated presses. So it kind of is like habit now. Now to focus on the front delt. And that's great. If it helps you focus and not have to think about a lot of the other aspects, totally fine. That's a great variation. Do one exercise for the front delt, since during most pressing movements, front delts are already involved a bit. That's true. That is very true. In any sort of chest press or overhead press, that front delt gets a workout along with the pecs and the tricep. Or even doing flies, you still hit some of that front delt. All right, so I'm gonna go to an 85-degree angle with the overhead press. So seated, back against the wall, dumbbells right on the front of the chest. Same thing, I'm gonna press up towards the ceiling and then back down, trying to keep my chest up. If you want, you can actually come up off the back, keeping that chest up. So you're sort of supported low. I wouldn't lean back against the bench on this one though. The more I lean back, the more that chest is taking over. Being up a little bit puts it more into my traps and my triceps. All right, so that's our workout for today. We worked on the arms using dumbbells. If you like this sort of workout and want to see more, I host these live streams on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you guys for being here. Love to hear your questions. Love also the comments and the feedback. So hope to see you guys next time.